Republican Congressman Ken Buck, who also runs Colorado's Republican Party, is talking about impeaching former Vice President Joe Biden. Doing it like right now. Congress can impeach a former elected official to prevent them from holding office again. So Buck was on Fox Business, where he was asked about a Republican senator's suggestion that if Biden gets elected, then he might be impeached.
Well, I would say this, there's no reason to wait for that. Senator or Vice President Biden could be impeached now. There's no reason that you have to only impeach someone who is in office. You can hold the hearings, you can gather the evidence, you can move forward. But the extent to the corruption that you see, at least the allegations of corruption that you see around the Biden family, is very troubling.
All right, so obviously this is not going to happen, right? Impeachment begins in the House, which is controlled by Democrats. Congressman Buck, of course, knows this. Congressman Buck also knows that talking about impeaching Biden immediately on Fox Business will play really well with Republicans, which is why he immediately posted that clip on social media even before Fox put it up.